And Zoom says we are now streaming on YouTube. So, okay. Just want to confirm in my browser that we are going. Zoom says we are now streaming on. And there's me talking in Zoom delay. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. This is the July 25th, 2023 Rider Oversight Committee meeting. At the moment, it's just myself, Stefan, co-chair of the committee, and Len Diggins, who's co-chair of the Capital and Finance Subcommittee. Len, it's up to you if you want to say any more for an introduction, or if we can just dive right into the agenda items.
I'm fine with that. Thank you.
Okay, cool. I don't see any members of the public joining the Zoom, and no one at the moment has come in on YouTube. So without further ado, even though, sorry, Michael, that this might end up being more of benefit for folks to watch on YouTube after the fact, and it'll just be Q&A from Len and from me at the moment. I really do appreciate you joining us again. For folks who have been looking at agenda items in the past for this committee and watching things on YouTube from previous meetings. Michael Rooks joined us last in March. Michael is from Keolis, and I'll stop talking and turn it over to you, Michael, if you want to give an introduction or anything that you'd like to tell us about what's new with your area of expertise at Keolis, and what's coming up that you think we all should know about. We'll go from there.
Yeah, thank you, Stefan. Thank you, Len, for having me back on. My name is Michael Rooks. I am the Chief of Network Operations and Planning for Keolis Commuter Services, who is the contract operator for MBTA commuter rail. Just a little background on my oversight. So on the network operations side, I oversee the day-to-day delivery of the commuter rail service. We have two operations control centers, north and south, overseeing 505 daily train movements right now. And then on the planning side, my group is responsible for construction impacts and how that affects the day-to-day service, as well as the service design. So our biannual schedule change that we do on commuter rail. So just a few updates for me on where commuter rail is at right now. I'll start from a ridership standpoint. So ridership right now, we are at 81.7% of pre-pandemic ridership. We're continuing to see that tick up every month. It's been a very good news story for commuter rail, and a lot of that is around weekend travel and leisure travel, which we attribute to the all-day service that we rolled out in 2021. As far as from a performance perspective, commuter rail is running right now at about 93.7% on time. So we are on pace for one of our best years ever. I'll run around the system a little bit about some construction impacts right now that people may be seeing. So I'll start with the first one, and probably the most popular one that's happening right now is the Sumner Tunnel closure and how that's affecting commuter rail. So I think everyone's probably seen some of the mitigations that were put forth on the transit side with fares on the Blue Line. Commuter rail did the same with a Zone 1A fare for the entire route. Although we didn't enhance service, since we already run a 30-minute service from Beverly inbound, we have added capacity to the existing trains right now. So most trains on the Newburyport Rockport line run typically with a 5-car set. Everything out there right now is running with 6-car sets. From a staffing standpoint, we've added assistant conductors to a number of the rush hour trains to try to handle the increase that's been anticipated with the closure, and we've certainly seen an uptick in ridership as a result of the July 5th shutdown. That's probably the big thing going on the north side. You switch over to south side operations. We've got a little bit going on the Worcester line right now. If people have paid attention, we have a construction schedule in effect on the Worcester line, just affecting some midday service. We are currently doing a rail replacement work between Framingham and Worcester. So we're changing out large sections of a continuous welded rail that are past their useful life. Just some other highlights. I don't know if everyone follows what we do for events at Gillette, but at Gillette Stadium. But this year we've run a number of concert trains to Gillette Stadium, both out of Boston as well as Providence. I can say that the Boston ones sell out within minutes of tickets going on sale. For any of you who ever plan on attending an event there, I would highly recommend jumping on the Boston option to save yourself the drive time to and from Gillette. But you know, there's a lot of attention in the media around Taylor Swift when she came in for her 3 shows a month or so ago. We just did Luke Combs this past weekend, and we have a number of events planned for August as well, before getting into Patriots football season. So that's kind of a status of what's happening on the network right now. I'll give a quick update on where commuter rail is moving to in our fall schedule change. So our next large scale change that we'll do on commuter rail is planned for early October right now. I touched a little bit on it when I came and spoke in March, but some of the highlights that we're planning on rolling out in the fall for commuter rail is late night service coming back on weekdays and weekends. So most service right now ends around 11 p.m. and we're planning on pushing that more towards 11:40 to 11:50 on most lines. And like I said, that's across all 7 days a week. We're also looking at adding some additional peak period service on a few lines that are starting to see some increase in ridership. So Lowell, Fitchburg, Worcester, and Franklin right now are the lines kind of leading the recovery as far as ridership. And we're going to react to that by adding a few more peak period trips. So that's kind of the update for schedules. That's kind of a good summary of what's happening on the commuter rail network. Stephen, I'm more than happy to take any questions from yourself or the panel here, or anyone who has something specific they want to hear about on commuter rail.
I've got 2 in mind, but I'll offer to Len and Craig to go first.
Sure, I'll take you up on that. You know, that's Craig wants to go. You want to go, Craig?
No, I have a couple too, but you go ahead.
Okay, hey, thank you. So yeah, this is I appreciate the update, and especially with respect to levels of ridership. So I think you answered my question when you said that you're going to add some more peak service. But I was wondering, is the return of service across all times? You specified weekends, and you said that it might have something to do with the reduced fares on weekends. Can you expand on that?
So I think the weekends overall have been a really good news story for commuter rail. So I'll attribute to 2 things. So when we originally brought weekend service back after the pandemic, if you might remember, pre-pandemic weekend service was, you know, between 2 and 3 hours on most lines. Some lines didn't have weekend service. Some lines had a different Saturday schedule than they did on a Sunday schedule. So when we came out of the pandemic and rolled out kind of this all-day service that we're doing both on weekends and weekdays, you've got consistent service on all lines on the weekend. Same headways, usually between 90 minutes and 2 hours. It's the same Saturday, it's the same Sunday. And then you roll in the fare, the weekend pass that we rolled out as well from a fare standpoint. And I would say overall, most lines on the weekends are up over 150% of their pre-COVID numbers. So we've seen huge success on the weekend side of things.
I got you. So then that's bringing up the numbers then for the other lines in terms of getting us back to like 80% pre-COVID.
Yeah, that's in those numbers of the 80%. You know, weekday ridership, I would still say is probably chugging away in the mid 60%.
Okay.
Coming back. Yeah, weekends has played a big role in that, and we're hoping the late night service that will roll out in the fall will continue to build on that as well.
All right. So then, okay. So I'm just trying to understand what the commuter pattern is like. So the 60% range is kind of matching what we're seeing on heavy rail, the red line in particular. So it's probably indicative, that we're maybe seeing a shift in the way that people are going to work, or would you agree, disagree?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. Like I said, the all-day service pattern, I talk about weekends, I talk about peak period, but even midday, midday service, now that we're offering it consistent all day, is starting to see higher numbers than we ever saw before. So I think you're seeing a big shift in patterns of ridership where, maybe I don't come in at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to come in at 11 o'clock for my meeting, do a couple meetings, and then hop on a train back. So I think the more service options are certainly attracting different customers than we had previously.
All right, well, that's interesting because so now we have more midday service than we used to have.
Yes,
Okay, and we have less peak service than we used to have.
we have slightly less peak service than we had pre-COVID. Yes.
Okay, slightly less. I mean, like how much less? I'm asking because I'm trying to get at the elasticity, of that service, and if that is what accounting for maybe the decrease in ridership. Because I'm trying to tease out if we're really seeing a change in the way that people are commuting to work. Meaning, let me back up a little bit. Sure, they are, but is it at the level that would cause the depression that we're seeing in the use of transit versus the reduction in service, which we all know has its own elasticity. So if you reduce service, then chances are you're going to lose some ridership. So if you're saying you're slightly reducing the service during the peak, then that might not attribute for the great decrease in ridership that we're seeing. Certainly, the increase in service that you're providing, off peak might be responsible for the increase that we're seeing, more so than just a change in commuting work patterns.
No, I agree with that. Yeah, I think the number of trains that we run today is more than we ran pre-pandemic.
Okay.
You can believe it. We run more trains today than we did pre-pandemic, but obviously it's spread more across the entire service day rather than just peak focus. But there's still a demand for the peak, and we see that number growing. But like I said, I think the off-peak, I think late night, I think weekends is a totally new market coming to the commuter rail that we saw before.
Yeah, I would certainly use it more on weekends, if it were more frequent on weekends, because I used to like to go down to Providence a lot, and it was every 2 hours or so, and was ending fairly early. So it's like more of a hassle than
Right.
Yeah.
Providence used to be one of those lines that had a Saturday schedule and it had a Sunday schedule, and Sunday was a much later start, and now it's consistent between the 2 days.
Yeah. So I have more questions. I'm going to stop and let Craig and Stefan go.
Thanks. Yeah, I think I have this ties in well because I can have a follow-up. You talked about having the best year ever for on-time performance. How much of that is a result of improvements you and the team have done to run the operation better, and how much of it is just driven by the fact that the schedule is spread more, like rather than running a whole bunch of trains jammed together where at the peaks that they're kind of spread throughout the day, so you have a little bit more flexibility there in terms of turning trains around, and less trains bumping into each other, for lack of a better word, getting out of South Station at peak times. So I guess just curious to get your comments on what's driving the better on-time performance.
Yeah, I think it's a couple of things, Craig. So I think having a more spread out service certainly makes things a little bit more resilient. Like you said, if you have everything kind of crammed into the peak period, if something falls down, the cascade effect is going to be that much quicker. But I think there's been significant capital improvements and infrastructure the MBTA has done. There's been significant capital improvements that the MBTA has done in the fleet. There's better maintenance practices that Keolis has done. We've done smarter in terms of scheduling. So, like I said, my group does a lot of the scheduling. We work better with Amtrak than I'd say we did previously. We have more tools for proper modeling than we had previously. We have just data upon data to constantly be looking at what the service is doing and making improvements to it every time we can in the schedules.
Got it. And then my second question is around the Fairmont line specifically. Yep. What's the ridership look like there? And are we seeing, is that following the pattern of everything else, or is that, it's always it's an interesting line, right? Because it's the urban line. Yep. What are we seeing there for patterns?
Yeah, so I don't have the number right in front of me, but I believe there was an article not too long ago in the media that actually the Fairmont line is exceeding that the 80% number. You know, it's up over 130%, I think, recovery from pre-COVID. So we've got more ridership on the Fairmont line than we previously did.
Is there an opportunity there to expand? Are there any plans to kind of expand service there, or is that early days on that?
Nope, we're actually looking at that currently right now. I can't commit to anything right now, but we are definitely looking at increasing frequency on the Fairmont line.
That's great news. Thank you.
Stefan, I'm sorry, before we go to you, the Fairmont line, so we dropped fares on the Fairmont line, fare rates, did we?
They're a lower fare, yeah, in general anyway.
A lower fare, and we've added a station or two.
Yes, yeah, in the last couple of years, there's been a few station additions.
Okay, all right, all right, that's good. So it's like, well, the things that you would think you would hope would work to increase demand seem to be working, and so now, I think the big question is, is this economically sustainable? With the current level of funding, it has to be paid for one way or another, so either it's sustainable for Keolis, or the state, we government has to step in, and we talk about that another time. But I just wanted to ask those couple of questions before stopping. I'm talking and letting someone else talk. Thank you.
Stefan, you want to jump in and ask your questions?
Yeah, it's sort of an ancillary to what really matters, but it's more of a curiosity about the weekends, because you said the weekend service is so very successful, and I'm just curious if there's still any attribution to that, to some of the marketing and community outreach efforts that I remember. It was well before the pandemic. I mean, we're talking 2018, 2019, I think. Linda Dillon had a team that was doing weekend itinerary ideas. Take the commuter rail to go here and see this in this city, and come up to this and see this in this town. I mean, I'm just wondering, is there any kind of community teaming going on still? And is that also contributing to that huge weekend increase?
Yeah, there's there's certainly some efforts in the background going on between Keolis and the communities about trying to attract new people. I think a lot of the marketing efforts you might see on social media or here on the radio, really pushing the weekend fairs, ditch the car, whether it's events in Boston or it's going up to the beach up in Gloucester. I mean, it's just trying to push. There's a number of destinations you can get to via commuter rail, and with more frequent service, better fare options, it's resulted in a lot more people taking the service.
Is marketing for that typically coming out of MBTA side, or is there still a dedicated Keolis marketing and advertising department?
So we have a marketing department that works hand in hand with MBTA on that. So a lot of the idea generation and carrying out of marketing programs is done through Keolis.
Okay, excellent. I should ask Wig, since you're back on. Wig, can you hear us okay, or are you still having audio troubles? Hold on, let me hit the ask to unmute. If you're calling in by phone, you have to punch something on the phone. It should tell you what to press. And for what it's worth, Wig, I also just sent you an email that's got the YouTube link. Nope, I don't think it worked. I hit it again. Ask to unmute. I forget. I don't remember what you have to punch on the. We can't hear you, Wig. Sorry. I think you've got to punch that star whatever again. Okay, but you can also type in, Wig. You can also type into the chat if you want to ask something. We've got all the possibilities here. And if you can't hear us very well, you can listen on YouTube. Anyway, Len, you said you had a follow-up, or Craig, you had a follow-up. I've got one more thing to ask, but that can be later.
Go ahead, Stefan. Go ahead, Len. I'm good for now.
Okay, well, just more about the sort of the logistical issues with when you've got the newer the coming up late night service. You were saying pushing it more toward, did you say 11:45? I don't remember what you
Yeah,
said.
it's going to vary by line, but it would range from say 11:45 until close to midnight.
Okay, and then that plus there some additional service. Is it a net, like say year over year? Is it a net increase in the number of trains that are actually rolling at one time and the number of crew that are on duty? Or is it pretty much the same
So,
level
I mean,
amount? It's just been shuffled.
No, I'll start from a train count standpoint. So train count, it's going to increase, particularly around the peak period service being that we're proposing adding. And then from a resource standpoint, yes, there's going to be a resource demand both on the headcount side for train crews, as well as the equipment side. Now it's not a massive change, but there is a demand both on equipment and people.
So given that, are we in, would you say, I won't say solid, I don't want to put words in your mouth either, but would you say, are we in a comfortable position for staffing levels and for in-service equipment levels to be able to meet that little tick upwards?
Yeah, what we're proposing right now is within what we're capable of based on all the recruiting that we've done over the last year or so, on the transportation side, and then through the investments that's been done on the fleet, we're able to handle that.
That's very impressive. I mean, you probably know about the MBTA's shortage of bus operators and how they're having to make some pretty significant changes on some lines to be able to just maintain more regular service with a reduced number of operators. So if you know, my hat's off to you for being able to keep the reliability ratings and do these services.
No, I'll take what you're saying as I'll rephrase what you're saying as a question. Do you have staffing concerns at this point?
I mean, currently right now, I would say we're in a good place staffing wise on the transportation side. But I mean, just like the MBTA on the transit side or the bus side, I mean, there have certainly been challenges that we've seen coming out of COVID as far as recruiting efforts, and just trying to be competitive and make these jobs attractive to people. I mean, they used to be sought after jobs, and you know, the market's really just changing. But I give kudos to our recruiting and training teams for really pushing forward and getting people through the programs, and people are sticking around.
Why do you think you've had success maybe in bus hasn't, understanding that you're, you know, different organization, even though you're part of the T or Keolis, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the specifics on the bus side, how their jobs are structured. I mean, I think the pay rates are probably a little bit different too, but I'm not surprised, like some of the challenges. I know they had the part-time positions for bus operators for a while. Now they're trying to get away from that. So, I mean, I think you've got to get creative and do things that make the jobs more attractive. And, you know, you can't just do the same as we've been doing for 20, 30, 40, 50 years in the transit industry. You've got to innovate and make yourself attractive. I mean, people can work from home now 40 hours a week. It's if you work in transit, that option's not available to you. You've got to physically be there to carry out a service.
So staffing on the admin side's fine for you all?
Yeah, I think so. Yep.
Okay. All right. You know, meaning that you also retention's good and attracting to fill empty spots fairly easy is not the right word, but you're not having severe shortfalls, right?
No, I mean, I don't have our specific retention information, but it's significantly better than most industry standards. You know, what we see. Typically when you come in and work in this industry, you stick around. But like I said, we're not immune to the challenges that companies are facing trying to attract new young talent to the industry.
Because if you were, it'd be very good, and then it'd be like, what are they doing? You know, so that's great. You know, so two questions a little bit related. Well, one's related to what we've been talking about. One's kind of out of the box, maybe. So the T is exploring means testing for fares. Has there been any discussion about that on commuter rail?
Not that I've been privy to, but I'm sure those conversations are happening. I know that we and MBTA are constantly looking at different ways to do things from a fare perspective.
Yeah, because certainly, I mean, the reduced fare on weekends, I mean, that says a lot, I think, about the potential demand that's there, and so, in fact, I initially thought I thought the cut was probably more than it needed to be. I felt that, but I wasn't gonna argue against it by any stretch, but it was much more of a cut than I thought it would be, and so I think if we were to explore means testing, I think the weekend fairs maybe give some insights as to what would happen. I mean, and means testing. I mean, not just across the board fare cuts. I mean, and the other is has Keolis been any part of a conversation regarding east-west rail service?
No, we have not been part of that. That's mainly a MassDOT MBTA initiative so far.
Yeah, gives me seems I think there's perhaps some potential there too. So all right, that's it. Thank you.
Is there anything that we always like to ask, what can we advocate for? What can we push for? Is there anything you're not getting from the MBTA? Is there anything that anything where if you had a magic wand, you'd ask for it and, to make the commuter rail run better?
No, I really, I praise the MBTA and the group within Railroad Ops that we work with on the efforts that we've made as far as being innovative and putting the investments where they're supposed to be. So I think we're pretty happy with where things are at.
I guess my follow-up question is, what's it like to be the happy place in the MBTA? I mean, Subway, Subway's in the news, in the news every other day. I think they take the brunt of the kickings these days. But bus chugs on the best it can, but and tries to stay out of the news. And Keolis seems to be the most positive, or in commuter rail, seems to be the most positive story of late. Less of your trains catch fire on bridges. It's a low bar, but
Well,
it must be,
Craig, my goodness, just kick them when they're down.
No, I guess it's you're in an enviable position. How's that? Or at least it sounds like it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just answer that by saying we're happy to be a partner of the MBTA and on the commuter rail. And the success doesn't come easy. I mean, it's not, we're just getting lucky that we're not experiencing some of the challenges they're facing. A lot of hard work, a lot of investment, and a lot of coordination, execution on a day-to-day basis. I wouldn't say it puts the bar high for us. I mean, we've set a bar now that we're all accustomed to, and we all have to be on our game every day to make sure we continue to hit that.
So I guess kind of along those lines. I mean, so in the case of MBTA, I mean, the current regulator, the local regulator is DPU. I mean, you don't have a local regulator, right? You're all federal, right?
We're all federal, yeah. FRA is the regulator for us.
Okay, right. And I guess we could talk about their oversight, but maybe we'll save that for another time. I think you were expecting a short session with us, and so it's already like a half hour.
I've only got, for me, I've just got one more thing, and just an opportunity, and this is totally optional, Michael, whether or not you want to call out as just whether you want to just, you don't have to. A lot of these are capital projects and having nothing to do with operations and maybe are out of your scope, but I just wanted to give an opportunity for you, if you wanted to elaborate on any of the things that are listed on the MBTA website, call out anything that is particularly relevant to your work area, or anything that's not listed here as any other mention of something that's coming up that we should watch carefully or be excited to see start, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I can walk through them a little bit. And
It's totally up to you. We definitely don't have to go through every single one of them. We wouldn't have time for that anyway.
yeah, I'm certainly, I mean, my group touches all of these. I would say
Yeah,
the
just
most
any
relevant-
highlights that come to mind, just
Yeah, I
you
mean, I think one of the ones like that's been popular in the news right now is obviously the reconstruction of Lynn. We Keolis have actually been asked to work on a temporary platform arrangement there to get at least service restored. So that's something that MBTA has asked us to do. We're actively looking at that and trying to come up with a scope of work of what that would look like. Worcester Union Station, Natick Station are continuing on. That kind of feeds into the construction schedule I was mentioning earlier. That's in effect on the Worcester line right now, but most of these other ones are mainly MBTA capital projects. Obviously, South Coast Rail we're gearing up for. We're doing some early recruiting and staffing for that in anticipation of when the project's ready to turn that over to us. But I think that probably covers most of the ones that are on this list.
that's great. Nothing else for me for today.
No.
Any other questions from Len, Craig, or
No.
Wig? You sure, Wig, that you want to type something into the Zoom chat? Okay.
This is
All right.
great.
Well, yeah.
Mr. Rooks,
Michael,
really appreciate your time.
thank you very much again for joining us. We had you back in March. It's great to see you again. I'm aiming for something like November to check in again. Once we've gotten into the fall schedules, and we may have even had a little bit of snow by then. We'll see what happens.
Hopefully not. But
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
basically, I'm hoping for more frequent but shorter visits. Be respectful of your time, but have them happen on a little more regular cadence, just so we don't have to talk for an hour and a half when we see you once a year.
no worries. I appreciate you guys having me on again. And look forward to coming back in the future and answer any questions you guys have.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thanks,
See you
guys.
later. Yep. That's excellent.
That's good.
Shall we go with the agenda? I mean, we're only about 10 minutes off of the agenda as planned.
Sure.
Okay, cool. Do you want to start talking about the CIF? Because I just realized I don't have my, I took some pretty copious notes from the MCO, and I'll need about a minute to pull them up, if that's okay.
Why don't you, Ian, and then we can just kind of go from CIF into discussion of combining subcommittees, at least temporarily.
Yeah, sure.
Greg, how long are you here today?
I don't know. Let's just keep motoring.
Okay, because then we could talk about combining committees before we talk about CIF. In fact, we could talk about it now if you want. So
Sure. Let's just go through the reality is, right, it's the four of us are the regular attendees at this point.
yeah.
So it
and well, Jonathan, Jonathan Belcher comes to Jonathan Belcher and Jonathan Whalen, so the nice thing is that they could be part of the CIF conversations, and probably what would happen, we talked about this last CIF meeting, is that it'd probably be like a 2-to-1 ratio of content, meaning that most of it would still be operations, communications, most of the operations, meaning then a third of it would be CIF, and then so it'd be a matter of whether the CIF would be a part of each meeting, or whether we do a meeting that's devoted to CIF. And I'm thinking that maybe we keep the committees separate, but just kind of doing joint meetings. And if ever the schedule for CIF gets really intense for whatever reason, we could just go back to having a separate CIF meeting, in any given month. But for most months, it would just be one subcommittee meeting. So we thought that.
I think that for the foreseeable future, it just doesn't. I don't see us doing. It's the most prudent option going forward.
Right. So you're fine with talking finance. You're fine with talking finance stuff in a meeting.
Oh yeah.
Okay. All right.
I don't mind talking finance. It was more, I like the operations side more, and many years ago, I didn't want to go to 2 meetings a month. I wanted to pick one subcommittee. So
Right. All right. Well, so then.
and
Okay,
I
so-
also agree with your idea of not to formally kill the second committee with the goal of someday going back to a dual committee kind of.
Yeah.
Approach.
We just flex out, as we need, and so it'll just be joint meetings of the two committees, and so yeah, all right, so I will. We kind of played around. We tossed out the notion that if we were to have a meeting that had both topics, in a meeting, the agenda would be like the first hour would just be kind of free form, and the second 45 minutes to an hour would have a little more structure, as you tend to see in the agendas that come out for CF meetings, so.
Yeah, and that's a good idea. If we do combine them to ensure that we get through the agenda, we should be a little bit more. I don't think necessarily a formal agenda, but we should at least. We should try to get crisper on a list of topics across both to make sure we can check them off. Whether we in the meeting kind of ping pong all around. I don't care if we go in a subcommittee, let the conversation go where it goes, but just make sure we have a list so we're hitting on finance as well.
Yeah, well, as I said, what it would be up to you and Stefan whether you had any structure to that first hour. So we would just say first hour would be operations, communications, and then the second segment of the meeting would just kind of have the structure that I tend to have, for CF meetings. But to be honest, a lot of the CF meetings go over the presentations, and I don't generally just do only finance presentations, so a lot of the presentations are operations based, so just keep that in mind, and so we can actually kind of segue from operations to CIF, doing that review of presentations, and so okay, fine, good. And so the other thing, we just kind of bouncing around the agenda is that we will not be having an August meeting of any kind, except maybe, of any kind. Maybe we'll do an executive committee meeting, midday.
Yeah.
So okay.
Yep.
All right.
Yep. And as far as the week of the subcommittee, I forgot if we asked Jonathan and Josh 2 weeks ago if they were bound to the second Tuesday. Do you gents remember? I have a suspicion that Jonathan and Josh might prefer to keep the subcommittee on the second Tuesday, which is where they have themselves scheduled.
That was the plan, right? And so because it'd be a nice space in between that committee meeting and the full rock meeting. So
I remember that we had talked about keeping it on the second Tuesday, but I wasn't sure if that was also including regard to Jonathan and Josh's availability. I know, but I agree. Yeah, having 2 weeks between each meeting. Yeah, that's very logical. That sounds good.
Yeah. Well, so, well, when we have the next meeting, we can ask them if they would like to change me, but the presumption, you generally give me the weighting to the status quo, so. Yeah.
And so just in case I am off by one or anything, that would be after this evening, the next time that we all would be speaking on a formal committee or subcommittee basis would be Tuesday, the 12th of September, right? I mean, you don't have to look it up. I believe that's what it is. With the exception being probably an executive committee in August, maybe on the third Tuesday, which was what we've been doing lately. Yeah. That sounds good.
We'll find a time that works for all of us on that Tuesday.
Absolutely. And when we get into the September timeframe, I am very likely to get off my butt and actually write up some language and put it out to various transit-centric, that's all I'm going to call them, transit-centric organizations, including just for better or for worse, the fan club on places like railroad.net or the other communities, just because I feel like there's an untapped group opportunity. You know what I'm saying? But that's on
Or
me.
untapped opportunity for.
Oh, sorry. For people, there's an untapped community of people who would likely want to join the Rider Oversight Committee who just don't. Yeah,
Right.
I didn't say that last part very well, but that's on me as the Rock co-chair currently to get off my butt and write up something, share it with you all, probably in September, and then act on it.
Okay. Cool. All right.
Should we talk marketing, communication, operations, or do you want to do CIF specific?
No, we do.
Okay. All right, cool. Then I'll pull up this. Can you gents see this okay? Actually, I can make it a little bigger. Is that too big?
No.
Okay. Is this maybe good enough just to put up on the screen? Well, okay, I'll blow down it very quickly. Very high ridership from Quincy into Braintree. I don't think that's really any big surprise, given that there's still some 10, as I made, noted on the next line after that, still some 10-mile-an-hour speed zones, and there's still ongoing work going on. We talked a lot about the Lynn station and the impacts thereof. We did continue our Rider Oversight Committee drinking game by mentioning the Mattapan high-speed line. We did dive pretty deeply into a discussion of the upcoming plans for the Mattapan to Ashmont in terms of help me out, Craig. The station name, it was on the tip of my tongue and it went poof. The one where you can only get to it by going down the stairs right now.
Valley Road? My
Yes,
station?
thank you. Yes, your station. Yes, we talked a lot about Valley Road. We talked about the new potential or the potential planned redesign of Mattapan, and how if and when the PCC cars ever finally go the way of the museum to be replaced by Type 9s, which would only happen once we have Type 10s in revenue service, how it would probably be stub end tracks, and Ashmont and Mattapan would get rid of the loops because it would be quieter not to have those loops. And we talked a little bit about some of the previous, there it was. Yeah, Valley Road, $20 million. $20 million estimated for the, what is it, Craig? Second least used MBTA station in the entire system.
Don't say that too loud. They won't give you the 20 million.
No, I think it's necessary. No, I'm actually, in spite of the cost per rider, I think it's actually necessary and worthy. You just got to do it. You
got to do it.
We've got to have accessible stations everywhere. Period. Unless anybody else wants to add to what's shown here, I'll call it. Okay.
I think it's a good summary. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Shall we?
Sure.
Got it all ready to go. Look at that.
Sure.
Oof.
So in CF, for me, we as I said, we usually go through the presentation, speak to the board directors. We have some catching up to do. We looked at the Q3 results for the T's finances, meaning revenues for fares are still quite a bit down, even in the 50-60% range, and the ridership patterns being matched pretty much what the gentleman from Keels said. So we're kind of making up some of the shortfall though with decrease in expenditures, mainly because there are fewer people working than were budgeted, and the T is continuing to take so it's running a surplus, and it's taking some of that surplus, and put it into the, I don't know, I forget if the term is called stabilization, but essentially it is funds that it can use in future years when we're definitely expecting more of a revenue shortfall, because it doesn't seem like fares are going to be coming back anytime soon. And the Fed help is going away, and so I think in fiscal year 25, if not 25, fiscal 26, we're going to see some pretty extreme deficits, unless the state steps in, and I think we're hearing some positive noises along those lines. We also took a look at the recommended capital investment plan, and we were all very impressed by the caliber of the deck that it was used. I have to say, it's one of each slide and was very dense, but just really nicely laid out. Lots of good information, and in each slide, it is not the kind of deck that you fly through in 10 minutes. You'll get some information if you do that, but it's really a deck that you should spend some time reading. I think it's one of those cases where I think if you read the deck, you will be about as informed as you would be if you read the full document, although the full document hasn't been released yet. The full final document has been released. The draft document, and which they took comments, has been released, and that's a good read too. But the deck is really, really good, and I pointed out how it was really helpful and useful. Towards the end, where they laid out the way they score projects, and so yeah. So I will say maybe after they do the final release, and before they get started on the next one, we might have a conversation with Ali Clayman, and or Jillian Linnell, and about the final CIP. We wouldn't be making comments to change things, but maybe making comments regarding how we found the cycle to be particularly effective. So there's that. And
Before you move on, one quick thing, Len.
Yeah,
Just
sure.
about that. I don't remember if this came up during the subcommittee meeting, so I'm going to ask it now. Do we think that this CIP proposal is better than one that we've seen in our experience? And then if so, if the answer to that is yes, should we expect the same level of detail put into future CIPs? I mean, that for me, that strikes me as being an oversight of the agency that might even turn into a recommendation that we could make something, that the 2024 to 28 CIP was of greater, higher caliber than usual, and we highly recommend that all future CIP proposals be given the same level of detail or that kind of thing. I mean, I think that's maybe a tangible output from our group for something like this. Comments on that?
Yes. So it is better, than we've seen, and by a long shot. The only shortcoming I would say is that maybe about 6 or 7 years ago, we did see the entire universe of projects that had been under consideration. It was a big spreadsheet, not the cleanest spreadsheet, that I've seen. I would like to see that or something along those lines. I mean, essentially, even if it's not in the draft document, but somewhere, it'd be nice to see the scores of the projects that did not get selected. That said, the projects are so detailed. Much like it is for MPO projects. That if you're not really intimate, with the operations, it's hard to really weigh in on whether you would pick a project that wasn't selected versus one that was. But still, I think it's good for there to be more transparency regarding the scores of the projects, because I'm assuming that the people on staff who are making decisions as to which projects finally end up being in the selection, or seeing those. And I would say to the extent they see it, then it'd be good, for everyone else to have the ability to see it. Now with respect to making a recommendation, it's like, they're going to continue along these lines. Unless something happens that stops them from doing it. We can talk with them. I tend not to, if someone's going to do something anyways, I don't know what the point is in telling them to keep doing it. If we think that they're not going to, then we could we could say, like, we think it would be good to do it, but that's.
I hear what you're saying, but I mean, at a certain level, even just giving an approval, it's okay. Maybe it's just treated as a rah, yay, go team, great job. But I mean, we are, as an organization, we are pretty quiet. We've been very quiet since the beginning of the pandemic, and I mean, even just a recommendation to continue maintaining a high quality of something like a CIP. Sure, if they're going to do it anyway, they don't need our recommendation to keep doing what they're going to do. But maybe maybe somebody somewhere said, well, let's put a little extra effort into this 24 to 28 CIP, and let's see if anybody notices. And if nobody really cares, we'll just back it off. I mean, that's entirely possible. That could be a discussion inside the agency somewhere. So, a little positive nudge from us might actually might actually be worth it.
Yeah. As long as we're doing it.
What if? I admit this is all what if. Sorry.
No. Well, as long as we're doing it for them, and we're not doing it for ourselves. I guess the reason I kind of hesitate a little bit is sometimes I see people do things like this, and it's very clear that they're doing it for themselves. Granted, we all have motives that are directed at ourselves, but it's more balanced towards, like, it's to profile the agency or the entity that is making the comment more than the entity on which they're making the content. So as long as we really are doing it for the folks that are producing the CIP, and we're not doing it to say, hey, The Rock has done something.
That's
So
a valid point. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a valid point. Yeah. I
Right.
mean, I'm glad you verbalized that. Yeah, because that's a valid concern.
But I think they would appreciate it, and the reason I can say I'm pretty confident they will appreciate it, because I did send Ali and Jillian a note and saying that we in our meeting we thought it was really good, and she very much appreciated it, and she sent it to her team and said that it did take them longer to put it out, and that they were happy that it was noticed. So I just kind of did it because they know me, and they. So I think if The Rock did weigh in, it would be appreciated. We just need to let's do it in a way that's really clear that we're being supportive of them, and it's not just us profiling ourselves. That's it. So the other thing is there's been another contract signed for Shine Botman, and I think because we need to do some kind of security, be ready for some new security protocol. It doesn't seem like Cubic is going to be ready to do it. We're doing like a 2-year contract or something with Shine Botman, and so I guess we're getting a little light into AFC 2.0. So that's that. And I think that's all I'm going to cover for now. Go ahead.
So just remind me on that. So what does that mean, that Sheikh Botman contract extension? Is that just is that keeping status quo, or is that like kicking the can down the road a couple more years, or is that more of a okay?
Well, it's kind of more like keeping the status quo. So it's not really
status quo. We got to keep paying them because we don't have a replacement plan.
Yes. So essentially our replacement plan is stalled, I think, because of supply chain issues and whatnot. And I say whatnot because even before the pandemic, something happened and they went opaque on us. Remember, I don't know if you were there, Greg.
I would argue it's more than I do we even know that the AFC 2.0 is fully funded? I mean, is that
Gosh, maybe someone from the CIF committee find that out. I don't know, Greg. I need to look
right?
into that again.
I think it's I don't think it's like we're in 2023 here. Like we're not the supply chain is a less and less of a excuse. I think it's the fact that people are questioning whether or not we need to do $1 billion project. Like I think AFC 2.0, the whole project is, you know, I put it this way, it's not a guarantee, right, that it's going to happen.
I don't know, Greg. I don't know. We did have this partnership, I think, with Cubics, right, where they were going to run it. And they were going to get some of the proceeds. And so essentially we were handing over our fare collection. We essentially outsourcing it to them. And so I'm not quite sure what happened, because like I said, we had gone. Oh, so I was about to say we had gone to see a demonstration downtown Boston. This was before the pandemic, quite a bit before the pandemic, and they were showing us, the equipment and telling us some things that they were working on. We were expecting something to happen in the near term, like within the next year or so. And then I think within a month after we went there, the brakes were hit, and everything just went dark. We couldn't get any information out of anyone, and so I guess that feeds into what you're saying, Craig. And I seem to remember a deck talking about AFC 2.0 within the last year or two that made me think that it was still moving forward, but and I'm sorry, I don't have a good answer for you. So I need to do some more research on this, Craig. But the fact that I don't have an answer for you, for someone who tries to pay attention to these things, doesn't have the best memory, just kind of says that it's not frequent enough for me to have a better handle on it.
I found an article on News Channel 5's website saying this is back from February of this year, end of February of this year. MBTA expects new fare collection system to be delayed beyond 2024 deadline. After several years behind schedule and hundreds of $1 million over budget, the MBTA says it expects the rollout of new fare collection system will be delayed again. Originally, the AFC 2.0 system was slated to cost $753 million. It was expected to be deployed in 2020. It was sold as a much-needed way to modernize the existing fare system. As of 2021, however, the price tag had ballooned to $935 million. The completion date was extended to 2024. Now, MTA spokesman says we did it again. Quote, the Healy-Driscoll administration has undergone a preliminary review of this complex project to assess its current status and the timeline for completion. He said, based on the review so far, it's clear based on the contractor's most recent schedule, it's unlikely to meet the current 2024 timeline for full implementation.
Yeah, well, that's not for almost any implementation at this point, right? It's really a matter of how far it's going to miss the deadline. And I would say we'd be lucky if we saw a full completion in the next 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I would agree with you, and it sounds like the new administration is possibly taking a closer look at it.
Yeah, because it'd be good, if it was really transformative in the way that we dealt with fares, so that the media could work in lots of different places, and so you could use your phone, or a card. That would be more like a credit card or something. That because of, like, the fewer things you need, to have to pay for anything, the better off you are, until you lose that one thing, and then you realize how dead in the water you are without it. But hey, have another backup device that you can utilize when you lose, or that one thing. This is
No,
in the middle of
I don't think
losing, it
anybody
breaks.
questions the benefits. I think it's the cost side of it, right? Like how much how much is tap to pay worth $1 billion? Is being able to use your smartphone as opposed to carrying a Charlie worth $1 billion?
Well, I guess the other issue I had when they were outsourcing, and I'm just using that as a shortcut term, fair collection to entities like, well, I understand that we're here to run trains, buses and all, but I always thought like fair collection was kind of part of a transit agency too, so to outsource that, and it's like, because it's like you outsource it and then they're taking a cut, you know what I mean? And so
I guess the analysis, how many stores do you go into today, and you go to pay, and it's either Square or it's Toast? Like it is very common to say, hey, I don't want to I don't want to run the I don't want to be the developer of point of sale technology. I want to run the service and somebody else, somebody else can take the credit card payments. I don't think it's unreasonable to do this via a contract.
Well, and I guess it all depends on where you draw the line, though, with what the T would be responsible for doing. Because I'm not asking them to develop a payment system. And I'm just saying you take care of doing the acquisition of the equipment and the deployment of it, and the maintenance of it, and then you're paying your people to do it, and then all the proceeds above the costs go to you. And the only argument against that is if you would be paying them a whole lot less to do it. Now, here I'm going to go a little idealistic, but are they paying people a whole lot less, and thereby not, giving them the economic benefit that they need? Like, are you getting that cheap service at the cost, of people's, well-being? Because you would pay a fair amount, I think, to employ people here because they'd probably be unionized, but anyways, I'm getting a little bit off beyond, I think, where we were on this topic, but anyway.
To me, I think this is a perfectly reasonable area on the edges of us, right? Like you're running a train. Your job is to run vehicles from point A to point B with people on them. If there's expertise in how to why reinvent the wheel on your own side if there's a company who's doing the same thing for New York City? Like, okay,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's it. I don't think this is an unreasonable. In terms of core service, right? Like it's like you're not a collection agency that you just happen to have to collect money as part of the service. On the side, your core business is being transportation.
Okay, so what about, say we have a lot of like bus shuttling services, on weekends, whenever we're doing work on the rails, and so if these bus companies came by and said, you know what, we could do buses a whole lot less expensive, our people aren't unionized, we maintain our buses, at a much, be more efficient at it, whatever. They just say that they can handle it better. Why don't you outsource your bus service to us? Would you say, let's think about that?
Well, then you just might as well not have a transportation agency, right? Like you're providing transportation. Then if you're outsourcing the core thing you do, which is transportation, then we shouldn't have a transportation agency. But if there are certain things that aren't in your core capabilities, like developing a fair collection system
and running the fair collection system, but they were also going to run it, though, Craig. I'm sorry to interrupt you. It wasn't simply developing; they were going to run it and get a cut out of it.
let's look into the cut piece, because I don't, what you're gonna do, you could, as well, you could cut, if you wanted to not do a cut and just give them a larger payment to run the system, that's an option too, right?
Well, it's the same deal. It's equivalent, right?
It is, right? So so I wouldn't fixate on the cut. It's you got to pay for a service. You've taken a piece of service, and you just like, I'm sure the MBTA uses email. They didn't develop their own email tool. They probably use Outlook or probably use Outlook. There are reasonable things you can do that you don't have to run every last piece of it, right?
Yeah, right. And all right. Well, I don't have anything new to say. Anything I'd say now just be repeated what I said. So yeah. So anyways,
yeah, I think the key follow-up here is just to figure out where this is, and is it moving forward, or is it quietly moving forward, and we're going to be, pleasantly surprised in 2024 when a couple stations go online, or is it hopelessly delayed in this isn't going to happen for 3 or 4 years?
Well, I think it's in between there. I'm not saying that just because that's the easiest thing to say. Monica Tibbetts-Nuts, who's undersecretary to the Transportation Secretary, talked to the MBTA advisory board. And my impression from her was that AFC 2.0 isn't going anywhere anytime soon. And now what you said, from CBV's website or whoever, gives me the impression that it's probably not going anywhere. So the governor is going to be looking into it. So yeah, and I get his contract with Shai Putman last 2 years. Go ahead.
I recommend grabbing this link for this article that I just found. It came out in June. I had not seen it until tonight, and there's a lot of content here that I think delves pretty deeply into the current situation.
Okay. All right. Thanks. I'll try and get that link before we end the session. All right. So then I'll read that and maybe have something more intelligent to say about this when we meet in September. Because you got to remember, Craig, when you start asking questions, you got a whole bunch of I don't knows out of me. All right, and I think that's it. For CIF.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. So we talked about combining. So new business, old business, and external meetings. I can give you a couple updates on external meetings. So I did kind of mention Monica Tibbetts not being at the MBTA advisory board meeting, and so along with that, you heard me ask about East Rail Link. I think there are some conversations probably starting about that. Certainly there seems to be the desire to explore it, and so it'd be interesting to see how that goes along. I did not ask, because I always ask when these things come up about Western Massachusetts, what are we thinking about the future transportation report, which was done, I think, in the first term of Wells. Not Wells, of what's his name? I get on his name already.
Charlie Baker.
Baker, yeah, Baker's administration. I thought it was a really good report, which showed a way to kind of, facilitate growth, across the whole Commonwealth, and one would involve a link between Springfield, Worcester, and Boston. But what I asked instead, though, was Monica had said that the feds aren't willing to give us, as in the Commonwealth, a whole lot more money because we don't have a county system, and so and apparently the problem with not having a county system is that it's hard to develop regional plans, and so I asked, are they looking at a workaround, and one of those workarounds perhaps will involve MPOs, And I think also one of the issues was not so much meaning that it's hard to develop plans, you know, when you don't have a county system, or regional plans when you don't have a county system, but it's hard to develop longer range plans, you know, and so, and as you know, the MPO tries to do a long range plan, and every 4 years, 25 year plan. Not tries to, we do. I guess the reason I said tries is that one of my issues with the last LRTP, long range transportation plan, was that we didn't really do any programming in the distal band in 10 to 20 years from now. We did all about programming within 10 years, with 5 of it being covered by the TIP, which we do every year. Anyways, the transportation improvement program. So I think it'd be good, if we as a region did try developing more longer range plans. And I realize the difficulties in doing that. One is that it's hard to really have a good sense of what the costs are going to be. I think we just need to work on helping municipalities work together. We need to come up with plans that really are more comprehensive in nature. But this may be forced on us. If the feds aren't going to give us significantly more money because we don't have a county system, government here, and I think the likelihood that we're going to go towards a county form of government, is very unlikely. I think we're better off trying to really beef up our MPOs. Then all the MPOs maybe find themselves working more together on longer range plans. So that's that for the MBTA advisory board, and to a certain extent, the MPO. But I will say about the last MPO meeting, though, with Senator Pat Jalen and Representative Barbara, I forget her first name. They commented on their disappointment is not quite the right word, but maybe they used that word, that there wasn't GLX phase 2 in the plan, and they actually pressed in us in MassDOT in particular, because they said, look, when we were doing the first phase of GLX, money became an issue, and we said that we would not push for phase 2, but we would want to get the environmental study done at some point. And so now that they feel that GLX1 is done, it came in either on budget or under budget. They feel that now it's time to at least get the environmental part done. Meaning they asked, as MassDOT, made any plans to do it? And the short answer was no. But I think they make a good point about GLX phase 2. I kind of forgotten about it. It just, I won't say I've forgotten about it. I think about it every now and then, given I live in Arlington, but I had forgotten about it as something that the MPO could take on, mainly because it's just so expensive. But part of our evaluation our current LRTP does have that Alston I-90 exchange in it. Now, granted, the state's going to be paying for most of it, but it is considered part of the long range transportation plan for the Boston region. And so I think our plan would have fared better in the way we measured it for disparate impact, which is the impact of minorities versus non-minorities, and disproportionate burden, which is the difference between low income and non-low income. I think it would have fared better had it had that project in it versus the I-90. But I just think that the I-90 project probably affects a lot more people, and who's to say how that distribution of people it is compares from one project to another. But that'd be the point of doing the study. But one of my big points in the critique that was made by the advisory council, the Regional Transportation Advisory Council, was that we didn't really have more than one build set from which we could choose. They just gave us one set of projects and said, we compare the bill, it's no bill, and this is how how it falls out. And it failed on most of the metrics, but to the MPO's credit, it makes the failure rate pretty low, so that any difference at all means that there's a fail, and as people legitimately pointed out, the fails in most cases weren't big at all, and you're trying to predict over 20-25 years, and so we can put in mitigation projects, and we can even amend the LRTP, which I recommended that we do, but I would like to maybe see about what can be done to try to get GLX phase 2 back in gear, and maybe that's something that we can take on as the rock if people think it's worthwhile, so I just put that out there as my last comment regarding external meetings.
Just for clarification, because I've heard two variations, I believe, that in your mind, GLX phase 2 encompasses what? Just to Route 16, or also all the way to where currently the West Medford stop is on the commuter rail? Okay, I saw Wig nod and shake. Yeah, okay, so just to Route 16 is considered GLX phase 2?
Yeah,
okay,
that's what I was thinking too.
Let me hit the ask to unmute so you can hear the dial whatever. I wish I remembered what you have to put. Hey, there you go. I can't hear you. Rats. You're definitely unmuted, Wig. You're definitely unmuted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we hear you.
Can you
now.
hear me now?
Yes, we hear you now.
Yeah, I just think there's too many controls. When I come in with my my laptop's pretty new. I think it just hooks up multiple audio streams, and that's what screws up.
We got you now, and it's great. We can hear you fine.
No, this is my phone. So the original GLX project was to get to the train station across the river, and it was opposed by a very unusual couple, Dr. Wood and his wife, who
Stefan, can you bring up the map while we're doing this? Can you visually show me this?
Yeah, he can bring it up. But they referred to each other as research associates. They were husband and wife, but they used completely different names and referred to each other as research associates. And they single-handedly killed the idea of that terminus that would have linked the commuter rail with the GLX terminus. So ever since then, and they basically blocked everything past Tufts GLX. This new version just gets to Alewife Brook, so it doesn't cross the brook, but it gets you to the Parkway, which is really a close back door to Alewife as well as to Arlington. So there, it's a long stretch of track, but it's just one new station.
I don't think there's any reason that we can't try to bring back in West Medford, right?
Well, it's a little more expensive because of the bridge and the fact that you'd have both modes. So you'd have to figure out that interface. But other than that, that's correct.
Yeah. All right. Well, it'll cost more, but is the benefit being greater, especially if you have some EJ communities in there and not only EJ communities, because I know that towards Alewife in that area, we certainly get some EJ communities, but certainly if it allows for more TOD,
right.
I think
right.
I think these are areas that really go ahead.
And sorry, Len, and to be clear, the main objection of Dr. Wood and his research assistant wife, who were both white, was that they thought all transit was bad for EJ communities.
Why? Why do you think it's bad?
They thought that all transit creates gentrification and therefore it's bad for anybody who's poor.
I see. Okay. So it's a gentrification argument. I get you.
But there was a tremendous Sierra Club pro-transit advocate out there who died prematurely. He was really a long-term.
So the goal was for it to go all the way. So where does it end now? It ends at.
Yeah, that's it. It was just circled by Stefan or whoever's got the pointer.
Yeah, right now it ends right at Tufts, where I'm
Right,
mousing
and the
over
idea-
here.
And the current plan is just to get short of the river.
Right, and here's
For
Mystic
Brook.
River, and this
Right.
Whole Foods is I don't think would be part of the taking, but what I believe I heard was that this whole complex right here was under the eye of the taking for it, because this is basically just a self-storage. No, I saw you shake. So you shake your head?
Well, there is a self-storage facility there, but there's also a very advanced cell biology lab that's part of Tufts University at this point.
That's where that is. Okay.
Yeah.
No, you're
Yes.
right. Then that wouldn't go.
That's
some biotech in there.
it may be one of Cummings' donations to Tufts. There was
Okay.
a nice article I downloaded today, but didn't read carefully on Cummings. He's been a phenomenal benefactor of different people. That site, by the way, I told a couple of you this before, the first pharmaceutical cancer cure in the world was developed at that site by Nick Lydon.
Oh, wow.
And that's
Okay, so-
the medication that cures chronic myelogenous leukemia.
Okay, so
at least
disregard what I said about disregard what I said about this building, but I've been inside this U-Haul storage, and it's I mean, I don't want to say ripe for the taking because that would be inappropriate, but it would it wouldn't be a
I don't
loss.
know if that's still owned by U-Haul or if it's just a continuing operation in Tufts or somebody owns it.
You can.
One more
This is
stop
a
doesn't
large
seem
development.
For
This
the
is a
amount
large
if
development.
if you're gonna extend it though, you extend it, right? Like
Yeah.
all the work you need to do the one stop and have another terminus and all that. Like it feels like if you if like you're diminishing returns here to just to end it at a river, either.
But it's Route 16. It's Route 16, which is a pretty major circle.
Right, but there's no parking there. Like
artery.
there's no
Parking, right? Yeah. Yep.
Unless you're going to build a big garage there and tell people to come and do the garage thing.
Yep.
Maybe what they should do is build a big garage under the assumption that it's coming, and then we can tear that garage down in 30 years.
But just make sure you build it so that it could be a garage and something else, so when people don't come. In fact, maybe you could
Stefan didn't get my joke at all. He totally. I'm glad
my browser just barfed on something, and I was distracted by it. Can you say it again?
No, you missed it.
Rats.
I said, well, maybe what they should do is build a big giant garage on Route 16, and then the team will say, hey, look, there's a really cool garage here. Maybe we should extend the tracks up to the garage.
And then when
then it'll never happen. Then we can tear the garage down in 30 years, and people will be like, "That was really weird that they built a big giant garage on Route 16 for no reason."
But they would have to paint the dominant color scheme of the garage would have to be green, so that people knew what the transit line would never be built up to that garage. Yes, and for people watching on YouTube, we're making fun of the Lynn garage, which sadly is being planned for being taken down without any blue line on it. Yeah.
Oh, well, what the deal with EJ though, I think what you really have to do when you extend transit out is do affordable housing overlays on it in order to incentivize any developers to create affordable housing, because left without much incentive then chances are prices will go up, and the closer you are to the more desirable places, I mean, the more they're going to cost, so you have to build in some mechanism to give incentive to build housing, that people can afford. And so it's incumbent upon municipalities to do that. I mean, when we bring in, things that make particular areas more attractive,
Well, the biggest economic driver of housing costs is live work imbalance. When you have as many excess jobs in Boston and Cambridge as you do, it's almost impossible to keep up with affordable housing in the region. And Somerville's got a 20% mandate, and certainly.
Oh, wait. You just muted yourself somehow, Wade?
Yeah.
Hit the same unmute thing. It was working, and then all of a sudden it just stopped.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't do it.
There you go. You're good.
Yeah.
Finish your thought, please.
Yeah. So really, you can. I think you can do one of two things. You can ask Boston and Cambridge to move toward live-work imbalance. That means that their commercial taxes per person are going to go down a lot because they're right now double that of any other city that doesn't have that imbalance. So they have a lot of free cash flow from property taxes on commercial. So that's that's not an issue in Cambridge because they're rich, but it would be an issue in Boston, and Boston has the greatest excess commercial tax base in the state by far, in New England by far. But they also have a lot of equity issues. The other thing you can do is find another funding source for affordable housing instead of just housing developers. As long as you put it on housing developers, it only works in some places. It doesn't work in places that don't have a very high profit margin on new multifamily housing. Right. So either one of those would work, or could be part of a robust solution.
Right. Yeah, I agree. All right. Well, as I said, that was it for my comments about external meetings.
Thank you. For the record, because I did the calculation on a different screen, it blew up when I was on my screen sharing, but 0.8 of a mile from the current end of the Green Line at Tufts to the GLX Phase 2 at Route 16. 0.8 of a mile.
How much further than to West Medford?
I think it's another. I didn't measure that, but I believe it's another half a mile or so.
Okay, so not that far. Right. Not that much further. So yeah, I will. I'll see what more can be done on it. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. And see how people feel about this. If that's something you think that maybe the Rock should get behind. So it's not. Yeah, it's not clear to me why MassDOT isn't doing it. I'm sure there are good reasons. And so I'll see if I can find out what the reasons are. And so if it's see if I can find what the reasons are. Go from there.
And yes, I was right. It's about just a little under a half a mile from the Route 16 to West Medford Metro Station. It's like
it's more expensive though because of you need a new bridge and stuff like that. So it's going to be more expensive per mile.
Yeah, that's fine.
But it would be, it would be multimodal, and it's also kind of a tragedy that the original Red Line plan to get to North Cambridge and to Arlington was thwarted, for people didn't want the city coming out to their suburbs.
Yes,
or enough people
didn't want those people.
Yeah,
make it easier for those people to get to our town. Hey, It'll change the character of the neighborhood. You know, hey, I hear it all the time. For everything, really.
That's right.
A package store wants to open up. We can't have that. It'll change the character. As people want to park there, it'll be a successful business, and then people want to park there. We can't have people wanting to park in our neighborhood.
Yep.
Oh no.
And look, Massachusetts Avenue is the most important street in the state. You know, I think Route 1 is one of the most important roadways in the U.S. going back an awful long time. But Mass Avenue is a really, really important street through almost all of our history, and for good reason. You know, it connects great town and city centers, and you know, has great mixed use all along it episodically. So
Are you planning to run? Who's Arlington run for some office or something? Yeah, we're doing the whole.
I could have a private address.
The Monotomy 250 thing, all righty. Well, if we left early, I wouldn't be upset.
I think we've covered anything. Should we see if there are any public comments?
Can I just add one other thing? You know, Cubic was a public company when it was really focused a lot on transit fare mechanisms, kind of all over the world. But it's a really private company now, and it's really focused on defense. So, you know, there may be some issues there as well.
That's interesting. So when did it go private?
2 or 3 years ago, it got taken private.
Oh, really?
You know, one of these wealthy partners buyouts.
LBO, leverage buyout offer. That's actually interesting. So were they a U.S. company?
Yeah, I think they're U.S. based, but they were global. I mean, when I was in Sydney years ago for a conference, you know, Cubic had just done their transit fare system. It was working fine.
Yeah.
And the other thing with the T that always tripped me up was the 2 stages, that there had to be such an expensive transition stage and then a whole new final stage. You know, that was always the plan the last 5 years, and that just always, I just never understood why not move toward the final plan.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that buyout says that's very informative. I didn't know about that. I mean, so yeah.
And once they did it, Len, it went pretty quiet.
Yeah, of course it does. I mean, when you go private, I mean, people just tend to clamp down on everything because they no longer have to say anything. You know, I mean, being a public company, you really do have to say it quite a bit. You know, not everything, but quite a bit. I mean, so they probably did change their focus. I mean, and then a lot of times with these buyouts, they get loaded up with debt. I mean, and then they start like cutting, expenditures. I mean, just to try to pay off the debt that's been incurred in order to buy them out.
And my sense, without doing deep research, is it's a lot more defense oriented than it was.
Yeah. Well, with the private now, hard to do the research now, isn't it? Yeah. Yep. Interesting. Yeah. All right. That doesn't give me much hope, but it's better to be realistic, than naively hopeful. Yeah. All right.
Well, there may be some other great emerging companies. And one other footnote, because I'll probably forget it another time. It would be interesting for us to have access to a list of all the nonprofits interested in transit and sustainable transportation operating in this area. There's quite a few of them. I've mentioned YPT a few times, but there's quite a few others too. And there may be a group like Transit Matters, or maybe one of the groups out there already has a list. That would be interesting, I think, for us to know. There's probably a list of people well aligned with the ethics and hopes of this group.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know what I usually say when you make these.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and I'll keep my eyes open, Len.
All right. Yeah. So if I, yeah, I mean, I will ask a person at the advisory council. I know that there's been some exploration of this meeting, so let me see what I can find
Yep.
out there.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so
Great.
all right, because
Great.
we're trying to do more outreach to me, so I don't want to say much more because I don't want Stefan to feel that he doesn't need to do his outreach efforts. And so I figured as many outreach efforts as we have people wanting to do, we let them do it, because
Yeah,
one or
definitely.
more than will happen. So okay.
Yep.
Well, I'm hungry.
Thanks for all your time today, Craig.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you to all three of you, gents.
Have a good evening.
That was a good meeting. All right, take care. See you all in 12. And